Congressman, the private central banks, as you know, are financing the Copenhagen Treaty. I have the treaty here in front of me, all 200 pages of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. It states, as Ban Ki-moon wrote last week in the New York Times, that this is global governance and that select groups of private interest are going to be able to decide who can have a factory, who can have a business. They can decide who's going to get the carbon credits. This scheme was designed by Ken Lay, as Congress has reported. The Senate committee has now approved the climate bill, as Reuters reports. If our economy under globalization and NAFTA and GATT is already sputtering, what's going to happen if we allow the very same central banks to create this new derivative system?
Well, if it works, it'll work for a short while, and companies like Goldman Sachs and a few others will rip us off, and they'll, get even more wealth. But it cannot help the economy. It has to hurt the economy, and it can't possibly help the environment because they're totally off track on that. It might turn out to be one of the biggest hoaxes of all history, this whole global warming terrorism that they've been using. So we'll have to just wait and see, but it cannot be helpful. It's going to hurt everybody.
What's the inside baseball word in Congress? Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer say they're going to be able to pass it this year or next year, but more and more evidence on the ground shows that we're going to be able to beat the House and Senate version of the climate bill that is meant to tie into the Copenhagen UN takeover.
I think there is a chance, and I think these elections might send the signal. I think the continual presence of the Tea Party movement and the people speaking out might wake them up finally, and say, hey, maybe we are doing too much too fast, and they might back off. Right now, they're not absolutely positive they have the votes on this medical bill. We'll know shortly whether the House will see if they have the votes. They think the House can do it faster than the Senate. They're going to try to do that on Saturday of this week. But they have a few problems. It's not automatic, and thank goodness for radio talk shows and the Internet for us to get this information out. That's what's rallying the troops. It certainly is in the mainstream media.
Speaking of the Internet, we're talking to Congressman Ron Paul. We now have the Cybersecurity Act. 3 days ago, finally, the national security blocked copyright treaty has now leaked, and it says open taxing, open regulation of the web, ICANN being handed over to the UN, total control, guilty until proven innocent, copyright rules, shutting down websites, ISPs, and really UN control over the Internet. Where do you stand on that, Congressman?
Well, it's very frightening, and I think that if they're successful, let's just hope that Internet is too big and too complex for them ever to have controls, but they're making the attempt. They would love to put us out of business, but I am hopeful that we don't ever allow it to go that far. But they are doing everything in the world to control the Internet, and that to me would be a real tragedy.
A lot of people say it could never happen. It's too big. They never try it. They are stating on record, the White House, the NSA, repeatedly in the last month, the White House has said we may have to shut the Internet off to save it, and during the flu pandemic or other emergency, only let you go to government sites. That's quite a trial balloon by the White House.
Yeah, and all those authorities are packed in, emergency legislation. They don't really have to come to the Congress to do that. They do that on occasion just to get it rubber stamped, but there's been so much emergency legislation passed. And besides, if it isn't passed, you know what, how much license they take with executive orders and the various procedures that they use. So, no, if they claim this is for national security reasons, they just go ahead and do